It's definitely looking like Navarro is getting down with the sickness here in episode 4 of True Detective Night Country, where we also meet a new character named Otis Heist, learn more about Rose's past, and get clues as to where Annie K may have been when she was murdered. So I'm going to break down everything that happened in this episode, and then I'll share my thoughts and theories as to where I think we're headed in episode 5. Also, this channel just passed 5,000 subscribers, so I wanted to say thank you to all of you who have supported me up to this point, and if you haven't subscribed yet, the button is right down there. All right, let's get to it. We open with Danvers in bed rewatching Annie's video, looking for anything that might help her understand what happened, and the only thing that seems to stand out are the bones and crab leg in the ice. We're shown that it's now December 24th, the 7th day of night, as Liz is headed to the hockey rink to meet with the Anchorage team that's there to retrieve the bodies. On her drive, though, she finds Julia having an episode and stops to pick her up. After the intro, Navarro thanks Liz for taking care of Julia and asks if the bodies had been taken to Anchorage yet, and Navarro is concerned that Connolly is going to take the case from them, but Liz assures her that's not going to happen. As Navarro's leaving, she says they really need to talk about the Annie K video. We then see Peter watching the Anchorage team taking the bodies from the ice rink, and then we cut to Liz's office where Connolly stops by and says he's going to stick around for a while, but he's not going to take the case away, and that he's there to help with all the chaos going on in town. I'm sure he's probably there for other reasons as well. Before Connolly leaves, Liz tells him that she believes the men died before they froze and that this is being treated as a murder case. We cut to the Lighthouse Treatment Center where Julia has apparently agreed to go in for treatment, and Navarro promises this place is going to be different than the ones she's been to in the past. Peter brings Liz a file on a man named Otis Heist who has burns on his eyes, ruptured ears, and self-inflicted bites, just like the men out at Salal. Peter says there aren't many records on him, but he did find where the guy had been picked up by police in a nearby town 2 months ago, and that he appears to be a junkie now. Liz says to get men out looking for Otis, but Peter says everyone is out looking for Clark. Liz asks about Hank, and Peter says he's at the airport picking up his fiancée, so Liz tells Peter to put out an APB for Otis. Navarro calls Liz and says there are no ice caves in the area, which means Annie was killed somewhere else, then moved to send a message. They briefly discuss the fossils in the walls of the cave, and then we cut to Hank at the airport waiting for his Russian wife, and would you believe it? She's actually real! Oh, wait, no, that's the flight attendant. She's not real. Poor Hank. Liz and Navarro stop by the science teacher Adam Bryce's house to have him look over Annie's video to see if he might know where it was recorded. He says the bones are whale bones and that there are ice caves bordering the Brooks Range, but it's a death trap that was closed years ago after several accidents. Bryce says Otis Heist is the name of the man who mapped the caves and that they'd need to track him down to get information faster. We cut to Julia's room at the lighthouse where we see an orange roll out from under her bed, and when Julia checks it out, she sees a vision of her mother laying there, which is terrifying because obviously that's not a comfortable place for anyone to be laying. Hank returns to the station for a drink after the night didn't go as planned. Peter tells Hank what he's working on and then asks about Alina. Hank says she wasn't there because something must have happened with her mother and invites himself over to Peter's for dinner. Navarro heads back out to Rose's place and learns that she was a professor in a previous life and that her name isn't really Rose Agano, which I'm sure is going to convince some people that this is Russ's biological mother, but I still don't think we know enough about her to come to that conclusion, and I also doubt that it'll matter at all in the end. Rose goes on to tell Navarro that at some point she'd had enough of her meaningless life and that she likes Alaska because it's much quieter, except for all the dead. Also, I think my biggest question from this entire episode is who exactly is Rose cooking all this food for? Is she about to have a ghost party or something? Just seems like a lot of work if nobody's coming over. Liz receives a call from Kate McKittrick telling her to come down to the Silver Sky offices, where Liz finds that someone has vandalized the building. Kate asks her what she plans to do about it, and Liz says she'll have it cleaned up. Kate says she wants to press charges, but Liz is able to talk her out of it as we learn that Leah is the one that spray painted the office. Navarro calls Julia to check in, and Julia says the room at the lighthouse is nice and quiet, and after they hang up, we see that Julia's actually back out on the boat wreck where she folds her clothes like the men out at Salal and then walks out into the sea. Back at Danvers' place, Leah picks up her stuff and leaves with Kayla. Liz then throws out dinner and chooses a liquid meal instead as she continues watching Annie's video on repeat. Navarro returns home to find SpongeBob toothpaste to go along with the toothbrush she took from Eddie, further solidifying my Chekhov's toothbrush theory. So Be ready, y'all. This toothbrush is about to solve everything. Liz compares Annie's video to Melina's and finds a similarity in that the power cuts out in the final moments of both videos, leading to questions around the power situation in the caves, specifically about Oliver Tac's involvement since he was responsible for the generators. Liz calls Navarro to share this finding and says they need to go back out and question Oliver, but Navarro says she's not going with Liz because of how drunk she is, so Liz says she'll send Peter out to get her. Back at the station, Peter and Hank are wrapping up to head home for Christmas dinner when Liz makes the call and Peter reluctantly agrees to go with Navarro. They head out to meet with Oliver and find what appears to be a deserted camp. They enter Oliver's place where there are no signs of him and instead find a rock on the floor with a spiral symbol engraved on it. They go back outside to find members of the camp who say Oliver left a few days back, and Navarro asks if they know anything about the symbol, to which she gets no response. Liz heads for a meetup with Connolly, and he says he sent her to Ennis as a way to help her because she was a mess. She says he did it because he was intimidated by her, to which he says she was a better cop, but she was terrible with people, and after the Jake and Holden incident, it got worse. Connolly says nobody wants to work with her, and she storms out. We cut to Hank and see the rather depressing scene of all the work he did to prepare his home for Alina, then over to Navarro, who receives a call from the Coast Guard about Julia, and she sends Peter home to be with his family, where he apologizes to Kayla, who says he's not really sorry. He asks her why she didn't just say that he ruined her life and that she didn't want to have the baby. Navarro then storms into the lighthouse and lays into them for letting Julia walk out, then on her drive back home gets into a fight with the abusive dude she arrested the first time we met her back in episode 1. Next we see Liz driving home and she swerves into a snowbank after seeing the one-eyed polar bear again. Eddie awakes to noises downstairs where he finds Navarro cleaning herself up after getting her face bashed in. Eddie helps clean her up and Navarro asks why he's alone and he says he's not. Also, it should be noted that Eddie finds the rock from Oliver's place in this scene and Navarro evidently leaves it there. We then cut to December 25th, the 8th day of night, where Liz is having more memories of Holden as well as a cemetery when she's awoken by Navarro at the door. Navarro tells her that Oliver is gone and that he left the stone with the spiral on it, which she has since lost because, again, she left it at Eddie's. Liz is moving boxes out of the way for Navarro to sit down when the bottom falls out of one and Navarro finds the stuffed bear and asks if it was Holden's. Liz says, "I don't know what weird stuff you're thinking, but stop it. Dead people are dead." Navarro asks her why she keeps the bear around and Liz throws it out the door. Liz is going on about how the dead are gone and Navarro says Julia killed herself the last night by walking out into the sea. She says they diagnosed her with several disorders, but that none of it was right. She goes on to say that now that Julia's gone, it is going to come for her. Liz says she's doing it again, the same thing that happened with Wheeler when she saw a ghost or something, and Navarro denies it and leaves. Peter calls Liz and says fisherman spotted something out at the dredges and he says he's going to send her a picture. Liz stops Navarro from leaving and shows her the picture of what appears to be Clark, and they head out to look for him. The two of them go into an abandoned dredge and find a spider or octopus looking figure painted on the wall, another spiral, and a fire. As they spot someone overhead, they give chase, but Navarro hears her name and she stops to look down in the water where she sees a vision of her sister floating by. She heads down for a closer look and finds wet footprints, which she follows. We cut back to Liz, who is hot on the guy's trail as she follows him up a ladder and finds him standing in the corner of a room. She tells him to put his hands up and finds that it's not Raymond Clark, but is instead Otis Heist. It becomes clear that he's squatting in the dredge and Liz asks where he got the coat. Back to Navarro, the footprints stop and she notices lights and music, and as she approaches a creepy Christmas tree, she turns around to find her dead sister in her face. Otis says Clark is gone and that he went back down to hide. Liz asks where and he says in the night country, and that we're all in the night country now. Liz then finds Navarro sitting by the creepy Christmas tree with blood coming from her ears as the episode ends. Alright, so this was an interesting episode with what felt like a lot to unpack, but also not really a lot going on in terms of progressing the story forward. Honestly, in terms of story, the one big thing that happened was the information they got on the caves from Bryce and how they needed to find Otis, and then coincidentally, they find Otis at the very end. So I'm assuming there will be much focus on conversations with him in the next episode as they try to find information on what happened to Annie and specifically where she was when she recorded this video. Other than that, we didn't really see much with the miners or the bodies out at Salal, or even really much more about Annie's case. It feels weird to say this about a season of a show that only has 6 episodes, but this largely felt like a filler episode to me. Of course, we did have big events with Julia's death and Navarro spiraling further into this weird thing she's got going on with her visions. So I think it's safe to say that she suffers from the same curse or visions that her mother and sister had, and now that they're both gone, it has moved fully onto her. So yeah, honestly, this episode felt like a doubling down on the horror elements, as that seemed to be the primary focus here. I'm assuming that things will really begin to pick up steam over the next 2 episodes, because we still have a lot of unanswered questions here. We still don't know who killed Annie, we still don't know the significance of the spiral in this story, who killed the Salal men, and perhaps most importantly, where is Alina? All right, that does it for me. Let me know what you thought of episode 4 down in the comments, as well as any theories you've got going into these final 2 episodes. Thanks for watching. See you next time.